Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. Joining me today is Dr. Christine Boev, and whether you're looking for help with navigating perimenopause, menopause, boosting your energy, optimizing your hormones, or losing weight, Dr. Boev is here to share her expertise and some practical tips with us. Dr. Boev is not only a PhD-prepared ICU nurse and professor of nursing, she's an expert in wellness, nutrition, supplementation, fitness, and anti-aging, and she's passionate about helping women build the best roadmap possible to meet their individual health goals. Dr. Boev, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Marianne. It is a pleasure. I think we're going to bring a lot of value to your audience who may ascribe to the notion that you should slow down as you get older, but I reject that. I think, I just turned 50 and I'm just getting started.
I'm with you, girl. I'm 56, and this has been the best last, handful of years, been the best years so far.
Isn't it? We're smarter, we're wiser, we're more confident. Now we just need to have our health match what's going on in our brain. And I really think that we can really decelerate the aging process, decelerate chronic disease. You don't have to go through aches and pains, and certainly get rid of this obesity epidemic that we're facing.
And I'd love to hit on much of that. But before we go there, I got to ask, you've got this scientific background. You've been a researcher, a scientist in healthcare and all the places, and had lots of choices on what to do. So I'm curious about the pivotal moment that sort of zoomed in that focus and made it be about women's health issues, midlife women's health issues?
Yeah, it was from my own personal experience. And when I turned 40, 41, none of the things that I was doing were working anymore. And this is a common story that I hear from a lot of women that I talk to. And what happened to me personally was I gained about 20 pounds within the span of about a year or so. And I couldn't exercise my way out of it like I had in the past. I wasn't sure what to eat, so I tried everything. I tried every extreme. I didn't feel like myself. I had lost my sparkle. I had little energy, couldn't sleep. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. Like, I'm not accepting this as my new normal. So let's get to the bottom of it. I put my researcher hat on and I dove deep into the literature about health and aging specific to women. And the things that I've found and uncovered, especially over the last 10 years, is most of the recommendations that people were giving us were based on studies that were done to men, especially younger men. You're in college, you're 18, 19. Hey, you want to participate in this research study? I'll pay you $100. Sure. And then they are like, okay, everybody, right? Here's how you lose weight. Here's how you build muscle.
Yeah.
Except for women, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Everything we've been told, run, sweat, pant, that just makes us stressed out. It causes our sympathetic nervous system to be supercharged, which causes us to secrete cortisol, which causes us to store fat. So it's no wonder that I kind of went on this journey. But what I was able to do was, okay, this is what women our age need. This is what women in general need to do. And so I basically used myself as a guinea pig of, okay, let's do this the right way. And now I've seen this replicated with hundreds of women who have found really good success through a program that isn't extreme. It's not crazy. It's just evidence-based, sensible practices.
I think, and I know you employ this, that there's not a one size fits all. So there is some tailoring there, because I know I've found on my own journey here that it can work for your best friend and it might not work for you. So you really do have to sort of try some things just like you did for yourself and pull together the best pieces of that work for you. So I'm glad to hear that that's sort of the way you operate as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different. Everybody comes from their own unique set of circumstances. But I do think at the root of most of women's problems is inflammation.
Mm,
We are dealing with chronic inflammation from being overfed, undernourished, over sedentary, and overstimulated. So our body is just this like big inflamed kind of mess. And it's hard to achieve a really healthy metabolism when we're dealing with all of the environmental stressors, all of life stressors of being a woman in her 40s, 50s, and above, all of the responsibilities. And apart from inflammation, the other kind of common theme I see is we're taking care of everybody else,
yeah.
right? Our kids, our partners, our parents,
Yeah.
and we are neglecting us. And it's changing the channel in your brain that self-care is not selfish.
Yeah.
You are of best service to those who need you if you prioritize your own health and well-being.
I love that one. That was one of the hardest lessons for me, if I'm being honest, but it's a game changer once you really take a different perspective on that, a real game changer. I want to go back to just sort of break down some of the pieces, and you mentioned inflammation.
Yeah.
And I've heard this over and over and over, and I think some of us might be aware of it, but some of us might not even realize that we are dealing with chronic inflammation. What are some of the things that would identify it or that people could easily say, maybe that is what's going on? Are there things that you could just name off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, number one would be obesity. Obesity is a direct result of inflammation. When your blood sugar is spiking and your pancreas is trying to like catch up with it, and it's like these constant spikes because of the food that we eat. So, that would be number one. Number two would be any sort of aches, joint aches, knees, hips, shoulders, back. That's all inflammation. Immobility. We should all be able to bend down and touch our toes, lay down on the floor, get back up, and we can't. And then the last one is probably the worst one, and it's brain fog. It's not being as cognitively sharp as we used to be. Maybe we're a little bit more irritable, moody, depressed. And all of that, the root cause of every single one of those things is inflammation. And so, we can talk about how to fix that, but it's those are things I think that can resonate with a lot of your listeners who are like, oh yeah, I've had brain fog.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really tired all the
Yeah.
time. Oh, and like I'm achy. And, wow, this makes a lot of sense.
And so, steering away from extremes, what are
Mhm.
some of the things that people can do to just sort of start being more cognizant of it and what's, playing into that and start to take away some of the things that might be causing some of it?
Yeah, so I would say and if anybody comes to you with any sort of sounds too good to be true solution, it is because the process of anti-inflammatory fueling, that's kind of what I call it, it takes time, right? And people get very impatient. But if somebody wants to put you on some crash diet or potion or cleanse, like run in the opposite direction. Your body needs specific types of fuel that are mostly based on whole foods. So if you get the majority of your fueling from whole foods, from a variety of different macronutrient types, then you're starting off on the right foot. Most women aren't getting nearly enough protein, and we know this from the research. Protein helps build muscle, it helps strengthen your bones, and it helps with your cognition. So I would say, like, if there's one thing that you can do to start, changing the way that you fuel your body, it would be you need to get more protein in. The second thing that you need to do is you need to drink way more water than you think you do. Whether you put electrolytes in it or lemon, I don't care what you do to your water, but we are chronically dehydrated. And you can see it on somebody's face. If somebody's dehydrated, their skin looks more saggy. They don't have that suppleness to them. Their color's a little bit off, and you're tired.
Mm.
Because if you are dehydrated, you're fatigued, your cells aren't getting enough oxygen. So, like, those are some easy things, right? Protein, water, and then movement. We've got to move. We are a very sedentary society, and recent studies show that the amount of sitting we're doing is just as harmful as smoking. So, you'll see a lot more people with sit stand desks.
Yeah.
Most people have some sort of movement tracker so they know how many steps they're getting in. Like, we have got to move our bodies. It's critical.
I want to go back to two things that you said. I love being okay with putting things in the water. I'm a girl that hates plain water.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people out there that will kind of snub their nose if you're putting the packets in or the fruit in or whatever. But if it gets you to drink the water, you're on board with it.
I am. I think be careful of artificial sweeteners because our body doesn't know what to do with them. When we put aspartame or sucralose or even stevia in a lot of our fluids, our brain isn't sure what that is because it's not real food. And so that can be tricky, but I love like electrolytes that don't have a lot of artificial sweeteners in them. One of my favorites is Element.
Yeah.
It's LMNT, and it's really just electrolytes and a little bit of flavoring, and it tastes good, but your body will absorb all of that water better if you have got electrolytes. You can even put just a dash of Himalayan sea salt in your water, and that's going to help you absorb more of the water than you would if it was just plain. I'm with you. Like, plain water is just like, I'll drink it.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
love it, but I'll drink
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Let's talk about the macros a little bit because I know that's something you help your clients with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sort of something that's bubbled up a lot in the last couple of years. I mean, Weight Watchers took on showing macronutrients and, all the apps started pulling them in. But I think there's still a lot of confusion around them. So are there any, I'm going to ask you to generalize, even though we just said that you can't really generalize, but are there any general rules that people can use when they're trying to start looking at them?
Yeah. I think there's always like home base, right? Where do we start? What I love about macros is nothing is off limits. You can, like, we went out to dinner last night and it was Italian and they make the most amazing bolognese. So as I was kind of going through my day, I had very little carbohydrates during the day because I knew I was going to eat this amazing bolognese. There are things on this planet that are worth it. And you should not deprive yourself of things that you feel are legitimately worth it. That bolognese was 1000% worth it. So as I went through my day, I really was just having proteins, fats, very little carbohydrates. And I crushed my macros yesterday. I feel great about how I fueled my body. The problem that a lot of people have is, as I mentioned before, we're not getting enough protein. And the recommendations for women and protein are evolving, but the most commonly accepted is 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So not your current body weight, but your ideal body weight. So if you're 40 pounds overweight, let's say your ideal body weight is 140,
Yeah.
that's still a lot of protein. So 140 grams of protein a day. And it takes practice and it takes some expertise, somebody like myself to kind of help you. Like, okay, what does 140 grams of protein look like for your fueling? Carbohydrates, a
Yeah.
big myth is, oh, carbs make you fat. It's the most ridiculous. That stems from the 90s, like the low fat diets and, just like there is no macronutrient group that is off limits. Okay. Carbohydrates are your primary fuel source, but you want to get carbohydrates that are from whole food sources. So I eat a lot of rice, potatoes, a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables. Those are all carbohydrates. What I would avoid, and again, I use the 90-10 rule, is stuff from a package. So if it's got a barcode, I would say just use that stuff sparingly because it's got a lot of additives, preservatives, chemicals, and things in there that your body doesn't know what to do with. And when your body tries to digest and metabolize food sources that they're not familiar with, it makes us inflamed. And so if we want to be, keep our
Yeah.
inflammation low, which is the goal, then we want to eat stuff that our body's like, oh, that's an apple. I know what an apple is. Versus, some weird dehydrated granola, something or other that's got all sorts of chemicals in it.
Yeah, that you can't read the ingredients without a encyclopedia or something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So tell me, is it fact or fiction? Does metabolism slow down as we get into our middle ages or especially menopause? There's a lot of back and forth. You see a lot of on both sides of that.
Yeah, it can for sure. And the biggest reason, well, there's two big reasons. One is estrogen, and two is muscle mass. So as you get older, and it's not that much, like 35, right? When you're 35, your estrogen starts to decline. Estrogen is your primary hormone that has to do with thermogenesis. It makes you feel better. It helps you with energy and it helps with your metabolism. So naturally, if that hormone that's so important starts to go down and you don't do anything about it to try to optimize your hormone levels, then you're probably going to gain weight. Most women come to me and they're like, I don't know what happened. I'm 20 pounds
Yeah.
heavier and it's all in my midsection. And that's what happened to me. It was all right in the middle. And I'm like, what in the world? The other hormone that is important is testosterone. And women need and make testosterone, but that starts to go down. And that's a very muscle centric anabolic hormone that helps with muscle mass. The third thing is as you get older, if you don't do something about this, your lean body mass will go down. It's called sarcopenia. And this starts in your third decade. So if you're not actively doing resistance training, picking up the weights, and trying to maintain and build skeletal lean muscle mass, you're going to lose it. And muscle makes you more metabolic. So the more muscle you have on your frame, the more calories you're going to burn at rest. You'll hear the concept of BMR, basal metabolic rate. That's how many calories we need to exist. If I laid in bed all day, I still need, I don't know, 1,200 calories to just make sure everything works. As you put more muscle on your frame, that number goes up, which is a good thing, which means as I lay in my bed, if I have more muscle, I'm going to burn more calories at rest. And so it's not a myth, the things that you said that your metabolism slows down. And it's because of estrogen and it is because of decreasing muscle mass.
That makes sense. I think people may be shocked by the in your third decade that you said, right? That seems so early. Like you're not typically thinking about any of this, any of the things that will happen later in your older age at 30 something, right?
Yeah.
You're just not typically. So time to start changing that conversation so people are thinking about it.
Yeah. Some people are just starting to think about having a family at 35.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why we're seeing infertility. We've got issues with polycystic ovarian syndrome that's directly related to inflammation and obesity. So all of these things are interrelated.
So you touched on the hormones. So I have to ask, are you in favor or against hormone replacement? Another one that's heavily debated.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of hormone replacement therapy. I am on hormone replacement therapy, and I tell people I will be in my casket with hormone replacement therapy. It has been a very misunderstood modality of anti-aging, and it stems back from the Women's Health Initiative of the early 2000s that was a really flawed study that used a population of older women in their late 60s, early 70s, gave them Prempro, which is estrogen derived from horse urine, and a lot of them ended up with cancer. And they came to this huge conclusion, like hormone replacement causes cancer. And that's actually not true. That study's been debunked, and there have been much better quality studies with women in their 40s and 50s given bioidentical estrogen. And what they found is it has nothing to do with cancer. It actually helps you with, it's cardioprotective. It protects your brain against Alzheimer's and dementia. And for me, when I started on hormone replacement therapy, I felt like a switch was
Hmm.
flipped inside of me. And this was just a year ago that I started because I was starting to feel tired again, hot flashes. I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. And I went to my OB and I was like, all right, what are we going to do about this? And she goes, a hormone replacement. I'm like, okay, perfect. Let's go. So I take estradiol and progesterone every day, feel great, and I will continue to do that.
I'm a little bit shocked that you had such an easy conversation and your OB was like right on board, right? Because I hear over and over and over, especially in the US, that it's not so readily available, that
Mm,
doctors sort of poo poo you when you ask about it. And so I was going to ask you any advice around that. But, and obviously you probably have a great doctor, but what do you do? I mean, do you just push back
yeah.
and or look for another doctor? Is that the advice?
So you're right. I have an amazing doctor, and her and I have a really good relationship. And the reason I go to her is because she's younger, she understands the science, and
Mm,
but so many of my clients, they get a lot of pushback like, oh, you don't need that. This is just part of life. You just have to accept
yeah.
that, like, these are the consequences of menopause and you should just roll over and take it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you have a safe, effective way that is covered by your insurance to help you feel normal again. And you're telling me that I should just deal with it? It impacts all aspects of your life. It impacts your productivity.
Yeah.
It impacts your marriage because you don't want to have sex anymore. And then your husband or your partner's like, what happened? It's not fair to anyone that we're supposed to just deteriorate and become a shell of ourselves. But you're right. So, ladies, if you get pushback, I would get a second opinion, I'd get a third opinion, and I'd advocate for yourself. The research is clear on this. And people who are still ascribing, like, oh, it causes cancer, it's malpractice. And I would just use your voice, use your research, and just keep moving forward.
And do you think there's any test that would point to the fact that you need it? I've been told, I guess where I'm going here, I'm sort of rambling, but I've been told that the hormone tests, they're kind of inconclusive because they can mean a lot of things. So if you get a doctor that's not believing you, not, I guess it goes back to get a new doctor because they should be listening to you and your symptoms and your experiences.
Yeah, my doctor and I, we have been talking about hormone replacement for a while, and man, like, just watching my labs, and she's like, when you start to have symptoms, that's when we need to start.
Okay.
And it literally, for a lot of us, it hits us like a brick, like the night sweats and the insomnia and the weight gain and all the things. And so, like, paying attention to your body, moodiness, irritability, shortness, vaginal dryness, lack of interest in intimacy, like, those are things that, if those happen all of a sudden, those are cues that, like, your estrogen is plummeting. And again, like, some women I respect, like, you're like, I don't want to do hormone replacement. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's your choice. And I completely respect that. But for other people who are like, yeah, no, I want to, like, live a high quality life as long as possible, and I don't want to feel, tired and run down, then I think you should have those options.
I love that. And I love that you confirmed it's more about the symptom than there
Hmm.
is some test that they can run or you need to look for. So that's good
Yeah. And
information.
just another thing I've talked to a lot of women about lately is people who have been on birth control or had an IUD, and then, they've come off that. And then all of a sudden, all of those hormones that they were getting synthetically are gone. You should have a conversation with your healthcare provider about, okay, as I come off this birth control, what is our plan to, get on hormone replacement? Because one of the most unpleasant feelings is being on birth control or having an IUD, having that removed, and then your body has no hormones and you feel like a train wreck, and it happens quickly. So that's an important conversation I think women need to have. Do they wean off of it? Like, what is the way that they're going to handle that? Because if they don't do something, they just need to understand they're going to feel very much unlike themselves.
That's a really good aspect. And I haven't heard anybody talking about that before. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
added that in. good thing to think about and to be aware of, especially if you're already, in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I want to switch gears a little bit because you do have that research background and you try to base your things on science and the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious what you think about the new rave of the GLP-1s. Everybody's got to have them. Miracle cure. You said there were no easy buttons, no miracle if it's too good to be true. Is this too good to be true?
So I think that for GLP-1s, for some people, it's really helpful. I have had clients who've done everything. They've tried everything and they are still very obese or overweight. And so the pros and the cons, right? Obesity is going to increase your risk for cancer, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. Okay. So if you can take a GLP-1 and get rid of that body fat that is going to bring you out of the obesity range and decrease your risk for all of these diseases that we know will kill you, then I think that's a good thing. What people fail to do is they'll get on a GLP-1 and they won't change the way that they eat, and they're not changing the way that they move, and they just become the worst kind of thing, which is skinny fat. So their body just kind of, you can tell, like you look at them and everything is kind of like falling off. Their skin is sagging on their bones and they don't have any muscle mass. So we know muscle is your longevity organ. The more muscle you have, the longer you're going to live. So we are basically going from obesity to skinny fat. The bottom line is those are both equally unhealthy. So I don't judge anybody who uses a GLP-1 as long as they are working with somebody like myself who has them on a fueling plan that is optimizing their outcomes. They're lifting weights, they're moving their body, and they're not just sitting at home eating like less brownies. Because again, it's a tool. That what we don't know is what happens next, right? So let's say I've been on this for a year, 2 years, I've lost 80 pounds or whatever. What happens next? Are you on that for the rest of your life? Or is there a way we can wean off of it? So I have a client right now who we started working together right when she got on a GLP-1. I feel like we did this right. She lost, I think, 50 or 60 pounds, but put on muscle. I mean, she looks incredible. She's strong. She's an athlete. She's doing amazing things. But we were able to wean her off of her GLP-1. And her body understands like how to fuel itself. She craves protein and she's been able to maintain her weight loss off of it. There's a couple of like things you can think about to take instead. There's a supplement called berberine that mimics a GLP-1. So sometimes I'll recommend trying that as you're weaning off and using that as a supplement. It's a really good supplement that a lot of people take anyway, because it stabilizes blood sugar. It helps with cravings. But there are some things to do, but you've got to figure out kind of the long game with these medications because they're expensive. A lot of people are taking them off label. They're not covered by insurance. And you're talking about like $500 a month. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, especially for life, right? If you're thinking about it that way. So you mentioned berberine, and people are going to ask, is there a specific one? How do I know it's good? Supplements are kind of all over the place. Any advice there?
Yeah. So the berberine that I take is by a company called Myoscience. I don't know if you can link it in your show notes, but it's Myoscience berberine. You can Google it. They're a great company. They also make a really good creatine product that I like. So yeah, I'm very picky on where I get my supplements from. They're not FDA regulated. So, there's certain things I get from certain places, but my berberine I get from Myoscience.
Yeah, it is that concern of you don't really know what you're getting. So you have to be super careful about it. So you mentioned putting on the muscle and the person that you were working with that you think is successful, put on all that muscle. So I have to ask, talk to us a little bit about, moving into that, needing to get movement, needing to get the right level of exercise. Is it cardio? Is it strength training? What does that look like?
The biggest mistake women our age make is they do all sorts of cardio, right?
Yeah.
They're on the elliptical, they're going to spin classes, they're running,
Yeah.
which I don't recommend at all. Um, and they're not lifting weights.
Hmm.
And so strength training has got to be the foundation of your fitness program. It has to be. And it involves 4 days a week, 45 minutes at a time of a well-designed program that targets different areas of your body, and it's done in a sequence that is appropriate for you. I have some clients that like to go to the gym and we do more machine-based work. I have some clients that have a couple pair of dumbbells at their house. I can put an amazing workout together with 3 pair of dumbbells and a couple resistance bands that'll leave you in the best shape of your life. You don't have to buy all of this fancy equipment. You don't need a gym membership, but you do need a program and you need time. In
Mm.
terms of cardio, I walk. I walk every day. I try to do it outside for about 45 minutes. Zone 2, if you have an Apple Watch, it's where you can carry on a conversation, but you've got a good clip going. You're not huffing and puffing. You're not out of breath. You're not dying. Because for women, if we're huffing and puffing and our heart rate is really high, guess what happens? Our body thinks somebody's trying to kill us
Mm.
or hunt us, right? We're very evolutionary. Our brain's like, all right, guys, hang in there. We're something bad's happening. Store fat, right? So it's secreting more cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone. And it's exactly what happened to me when I was in my early 40s. I was doing all this crazy cardio. Nothing was happening. And it was because I had my body in such a high fight or flight state at all times that I was just storing fat, even though I thought I was working really hard. So, our goal as women, 50s, 60s, and beyond, is to work smarter. I don't believe that most people actually enjoy running.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? We don't need to do that. Like, we don't need to do all this extreme stuff in order to get an excellent outcome. And low impact cardio is great for fat burning. Strength training is great for muscle burning or muscle building, and they work together.
I'm curious because you said that your body was in fight or flight most of the time. And interestingly enough, I've been seeing all kinds of Instagram posts on if you can do this thing. The one I saw last night was if you can swallow 3 times fast, then you're not in fight or flight mode. But if you can't, then you are. Are there real things? Like, how do you know? Can you tell if your body is in flight or fight? Another one was take deep breaths. And if your chest moves more than your belly moves, then you are. I don't know. Are these things real? Is there a way to quickly tell? Right.
It's like my teenagers like, Mom, I saw this on TikTok, and I'm like, oh, then it must be true.
Right. But
Yeah.
people believe, right? So is there a real way to identify?
I think the best way to know if you're in fight or flight is to just pay attention to signals that your body is giving you, right? So it goes back to when we started talking about inflammation, right? If you are really inflamed, you look at your skin, do you have blemishes? Do you have acne? Like what's erupting? What's coming out that your body is giving you these clues? If you have palpitations, if you feel like you can't catch your breath, if you're prone to panic attacks, like those are all signals that your body needs more parasympathetic. So parasympathetic is our rest and digest. Back in like the caveman years, which wasn't that long ago, we spent time, there was no electricity, we were sleeping when it was dark, we were working when it was light, and we were primarily in parasympathetic state. So we were resting and digesting. Now, with all of the stimulation, with all of the blue lights, the screen time, the notifications, the
Constant.
EMFs,
Yeah.
all of it. My God, it's
Constant.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are we alive right now? I don't even know. So I think the more important question here is, well, how do you get yourself into more of a parasympathetic? And that's where deep breathing, meditation, yoga, turning off your devices, putting yourself on do not disturb, which I love. I notice the kids are doing this more and more. Is in like just putting some boundaries around the amount of stimulation that we're constantly receiving, because we're not built to be bombarded with all of these signals all
Yeah.
day long.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a challenge within my group about a month ago because I found that I was reaching for my phone way too much. And I
Mhm.
think you can get caught up in it. So I think awareness is the first thing. Just notice what you're doing. And so many people started chiming in like, I'll be watching TV now and I'm also on my phone, or I'm like, people are doing multiple things all of the time. And we need to knock that off at least, and then start kind of peeling that back. But yeah, it's what our whole world is doing right now. We have to be noticing it.
Yeah, but when you and I grew up, there were no phones, right? It was beautiful. We were talking to each other, and we had more authentic
Yeah.
communication and moments. But I agree, I'm just as guilty of just being on my phone way more
Yeah.
than I need to be. And it's like a lifeline to
Yeah.
communication. And it's getting worse. It's not going to get better.
Right. So that's why it's important to notice it and put the boundaries that you mentioned in place so we're in a good
Yeah.
spot. Yeah. So if you had to leave one message with the audience, if they could only walk away with one thing, what would you say?
I would say that you have this one life in this one body and you have to take care of it.
Mm,
So many people are putting it off like I know I need to do this, and we take it for granted. We take for granted that we're going to be alive tomorrow to even start this important work. So you've got to start now, and it doesn't have to be some drastic like anything. Go for a walk, drink more water, eat more protein. Like start small, and then you'll notice like, wow, I feel much better when I'm doing these small things, and then they compound.
yeah.
So start today. Like there is no reason to wait
Mm,
because we just don't know. Tomorrow's not promised to any of us.
I love it. I love it. Great advice.
Mm.
Where can people find you the most? Where are you most active?
Yep. I'm most active on Instagram, and it's Dr. Christine Boev. I also have a website. It's mastermenopause.com. And I am currently accepting new clients. So if anybody is, looking to get into good shape, to, get rid of body fat, put on some muscle, and, just prevent chronic disease, then I would love to work with
I
you.
love that. We'll put all your links in the show notes too, so people can get it in case they're busy doing something right now. But thank you so much. So informative. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.